Laxmanasarma. Extraordinary Sanskrit poets like Ganapati Muni, Jagadisa Shastri, Kapali Shastri, and Daivarata were devotees of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. And so was Murunganar, who was arguably one of the greatest Tamil poets of the last millennium. But there was another equally great poet and scholar who became a devotee of Bhagavan. He was great not because he was famous, but because he completely renounced recognition for himself. In fact, so self-effacing was he that he wrote Maha Yoga, a masterly treatise on Bhagavan's self-inquiry, but he did so under the pseudonym Who. And only in the more recent editions of Maha Yoga do we find his name Laxmanasarma. He was a lawyer and a naturopath by profession, and Laxmanasarma came to the ashram in 1928. One look from Bhagavan was enough to mesmerize him. One day, Bhagavan asked him, "Have you read the Uladu Narpadu?" And the Uladu Narpadu consists of 40 verses composed by Bhagavan in classical Tamil. The work embodies Bhagavan's teachings on reality and the path to abide in it. Laxmanasarma replied that he hadn't read the work, but added, "I do not know classical Tamil." Being an ardent and astute seeker, he was quick to suggest, "But if Bhagavan teaches me, I will learn it." Truly, it has been said that if we take one step towards God, He takes 99 steps towards us. Laxmanasarma's response made it evident that he was making the effort and taking the first step. Therefore, the master gave him private lessons in classical Tamil. Bhagavan explained to Laxmanasarma the nuances of the Tamil language, and he absorbed the teaching almost effortlessly. Soon, Bhagavan started explaining the Uladu Narpadu and its supplement, the Anubhadam. The relationship between the Guru and the disciple is extraordinary because the Satguru does not actually pass on information that the disciple does not know. What he does is make the disciple aware that he is the truth. And this is what the Uladu Narpadu reveals. Bhagavan was compassionate as ever, and daily sessions with Laxmanasarma were long and in-depth. Later on, when the book was published, Laxmanasarma never intended for it to be a book. He described the sessions that he had with Bhagavan and how he worked on what Bhagavan taught him. During this time, Laxmanasarma lived in a hut in Palakottu. Since he was a Sanskrit scholar, when he returned to his hut at night, he would compile all the knowledge that he had gathered into a verse in Sanskrit. He would show the verse to Bhagavan the next day, and Bhagavan would read it and correct it. Occasionally, Bhagavan would respond with a look of dissatisfaction, and then Laxmanasarma would rework that verse. Bhagavan never believed in criticizing anyone or pointing out their mistakes, but close devotees could read the expression in his eyes or on his face. This rigorous routine continued, not for a few days or a few months, but for 3 years. In today's age of computers, we want everything, including truth, to be explained with the click of a mouse. But look at the enormous toil of Laxmanasarma in his attempt to unfold the truth. To quote Laxmanasarma, he said, "Bhagavan began to teach me. I needed to proceed slowly, going from one verse to another. I had to make sure that I understood what Bhagavan had taught me. So I composed verses in Sanskrit that embodied the meaning that he had imparted. Before proceeding to the next verse, I would submit the verse to Bhagavan to make sure that I had faithfully translated what he had said. If I didn't get quite the approval I wanted, I would work on the verse again and again until he was satisfied. This is how I studied all the verses and translated them into Sanskrit. I was unable to stop with the first translation because Uladu Narpadu had taken complete possession of me, and I felt compelled to keep on revising the Sanskrit verses. After translating the 40 verses, I went back and reworked them. It seemed to me that no amount of time and labor would be too much for achieving the end I had in mind. The Sanskrit text was given the title Sadarshanam, which is the vision of reality. Laxmanasarma put in such relentless work that Bhagavan, who rarely commented on people, observed, "For Laxmanasarma, it is tapas, austerity. He revised the work again and again and lived by it." The almost perfect and flawless rendering into Sanskrit was what Laxmanasarma strove for and achieved. Around the time when Laxmanasarma had almost completed the Sanskrit verses, Kapali Shastri was also in the ashram. When he was asked to read the verses, he remarked, "I will send it to my master Ganapati Muni. He will go through the Sanskrit and suggest changes if necessary." And the work was sent to Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni, who was in the little township of Sirsi at the time. And Ganapati Muni was struck by the profundity of the subject matter in the 40 verses. Being an extemporaneous poet without parallel, he composed verses afresh instead of editing what had been written. Some of his admirers had these new verses printed as a book called the Sarshanam and sent it to Kapali Shastri, who then wrote a commentary on it. This happened sometime around 1930. Though Bhagavan appreciated the poetic quality of Ganapati Muni's verses, Laxmanasarma found that the translation was not accurate. He went to Bhagavan and said, "Bhagavan, the translation has deviated from the original in many places." Having worked for 3 long years on the content, both in Tamil and in Sanskrit, he was very convinced of what he was saying. Bhagavan's attitude always was that it was better to state the correct facts than point out mistakes in something or someone. And he told Laxmanasarma, "If you feel you can expound the teaching more faithfully, why not write your own commentary?" This encouraged Laxmanasarma to write the commentary based on the elaborate notes he had taken down while listening to Bhagavan. The editor of a Tamil monthly magazine wanted to publish the commentary as a series. Every time the magazine came, Bhagavan would cut out the pages of the commentary and with keen interest paste these pages on a sheet of brown paper and preserve them. Once the entire commentary had been published, he himself stitched these pages into a book. When the devotees noticed Bhagavan's great interest in the commentary, they decided to get it printed. However, for some reason, the ashram was unable to print the commentary. So Laxmanasarma himself brought out a private edition of the book called the Uladu Narpadu Ure, not for personal reasons, but because of Bhagavan's interest. Soon after the commentary was published, an interesting incident took place. One day, Bhagavan's brother, Chinna Swami, the manager of the ashram, was busy in the ashram office with some clerical work. He was so absorbed in it that he did not observe Bhagavan patiently waiting to get his attention from behind a window. Bhagavan could have very well called out to him, but he would never do that. After some 15 minutes, someone else noticed Bhagavan and told Chinnaswami, "Bhagavan is waiting for you behind your window." Bhagavan then said, "Piche," which was the way Bhagavan addressed his younger brother. Everyone acclaims Laxmanasarma's commentary on Uladu Narpadu as the best so far. Nobody has studied the text the way Laxmanasarma has. I think it would be fitting for the ashram to publish the work. Chinnaswami took the hint and the ashram published it immediately. Chinnaswami himself studied the work and recommended it to everyone, saying, "Please read Uladu Narpadu Yure. It is a true reflection of Bhagavan's teaching." Uladu Narpadu Yure was acclaimed the best publication of the year. Even today, it is considered a great Tamil edition. Muruganar once told me, "Laxmanasarma lived the Uladu Narpadu." When I asked him what he meant by that statement, he clarified, "Whatever was conveyed by the Master in Uladu Narpadu, Laxmanasarma practiced to the core. He lived, breathed, and thought only about those 40 glorious sacred verses. Since he was a scholar of English, Tamil, and Sanskrit, he constantly kept translating the verses into these languages. The introductory sentences of his translation reveal the great adoration he had for the Master. It says, "The ancient lore, the Upanishads, has received a striking confirmation from the life and teachings of the sage of Arunachala, Bhagavan Ramana. To all his disciples, both from the East and West, the written and oral teachings of Bhagavan are the primary revelations. The ancient lore is of value because it is found to be in full accord with the teachings of Bhagavan. But even for those who look upon the ancient lore as the primary authority, the teachings of a living sage must be profoundly interesting. In these pages, a systematic presentation of the old and new revelations is sought to be given." His English translation of his original Tamil book was titled Maha Yoga. For many years, this remained the only English book that was an authentic rendering of Bhagavan's teachings of Atma Vichara, or self-inquiry. It was only after Bhagavan's Mahasamadhi that other English publications, such as Arthur Osborne's books and Munagala Venkataramaya's talks with Ramana Maharshi, were made available in English. These books gave the English reading audience greater access to the direct teachings of Bhagavan.